Welcome back to Kivumbi 2017. It is a day after Kenyans went to the poll for the repeat presidential election yesterday. We're still waiting for numbers trickling in from all across the country as the tallying process continues. We are also holding vigil at the Bomas of Kenya, the National Tallying Center, where IEBC Chairperson Wafula Chebukati is expected this morning to give a status update, a periodic update on the state of the election. But here in the studio, my panelists, Dr. Sam Kamau and Catherine Omanyo, and we're discussing this repeat election or postponed election in the 4 counties in Nyanza region and their significance. Dr. Kamau, it's clear, for the most part, that the likelihood of having an election in these 4 counties is rather slim. Wafula Chebukati says he has ordered for security in these regions to bolster, the situation tomorrow. The question is, was there really a shortage of security yesterday in these regions as well? But what does it mean if these 4 counties do not vote? The legality of this election is not in question, but what about the legitimacy if they do not vote?
Well, Michelle, I think I feel for Chebukati because people seem to be pointing fingers at Chebukati, and you understand he has an important role, but I think what he is dealing with and the current environment, political environment in the country, he has to deal with so much in terms of pressure coming from different quarters, but also being able to deliver on his job. Now, it is his responsibility to organize elections in all the counties, 47 counties, and the 290 plus diaspora constituencies in Kenya. Now, the current environment that has been created in the run-up to the election in terms of disagreements and disputes, and also the environment of fear and intimidation that saw some commissioners resign. So one commissioner resign, citing the fears and the attacks that even IEBC was unable to properly organize training or even organize logistics in these specific counties. I've said with certainty, I know that elections will not take place in those 4 counties tomorrow. It is just maybe Chebukati is just trying to do what the law says that you can postpone. But if the same situation obtains tomorrow, I think following the law, Chebukati could still go ahead and declare results on the basis of the counties that have already voted. And like it was correctly pointed out, in about 87% of the country. But the questions that will arise first in terms of legality, somebody will go to Supreme Court to challenge and ask that question, and the Supreme Court will be able to determine. But I think the wider issue we are dealing with here in the country is that if there is a significant part of the population that feels unwilling, and another percentage that was unable to participate in the election, and hence our obsession with the turnout, which again the Commission has not clarified. I think this becomes the bigger question in terms of the mandate of the person who is declared the president, and I think that is something we are going to be dealing with in the next couple of days.
Catherine, even other than these 4 counties, as much as 87% of polling stations had voting taking place, the overall voter turnout was, overly just low turnout in the majority of the polling stations. We had a common Mwananchi there earlier on from Homa Bay saying, we need to stop lower profiling. It wasn't just these 4 counties that did not vote. We had many people across the country, as much as polling stations are open, boycotting this election. What do you think? What message does this send to the country?
It is actually so wrong to profile like it's only Luos who did not vote. They are Kenyans anyway. It is actually across the nation. Where I come from, nobody has been talking about it. And so many other polling stations, nobody even visited there. Even the clerks and the ROs didn't go there. Nothing happened. Vihiga County, Kakamega County, so many other counties where we have friends, they've been reporting to us and saying, actually, it is not just the 4 counties. Chebukati should dig deeper his research to know where else things flopped. So it is actually the whole country, and that is a signal. It is a message, and it's a very heavy message. Kenyans have spoken in silence. They might not have really said it in other counties loud enough, like our Luo brothers do. We know they are a bit aggressive. But there is a big signal that has been sent, like those waves, the tsunami waves do. I think as Kenyans, it is time we realize that we have been tested and tried. Where are we? As a nation that, we had come up and other younger African nations were looking upon us. This is the time to show maturity, show leadership, go back and see where we went wrong all of us and come back and sit on the table. There is no pride here. I hear people talking about nusumkate and full bread and quarter loaf or whatever it is. This is not the time for thinking of the bread must be mine and the whole of it must be mine. It should be the people first. What are they saying? Especially what happened yesterday. It was a really big message. And I love it that it went that way. Because people have been saying, oh, we won, we did in tyranny of numbers. What happened to the tyranny of numbers? People can talk and say maybe the rains, blame it on the insecurity. Actually, in fact, when you use the army, the soldiers, you are already scaring away old mamas in the villages from voting. They don't like those uniforms. So I think as we may argue for wherever we belong, but I think the truth is that the message yesterday was clear. Even those people who are not for Baba did not come out to vote. And they will wait when he comes out, and now they will come to resist. And I love it because this is a political problem. So even Chebukati is wallowing in between and is getting more confused because he has not realized that it's not his problem very well. The only problem he has, he was given instructions by the Supreme Court on what to do.
All right.
And he did not do. So that is where we are. Unless he does those things, then all of us will see this leveled ground fair enough for everybody and credibility will come out.
Okay.
But at the moment, there is nothing like credibility. It was a sham, and I'm saying anything that they're announcing even today, I don't know who else is buying into that.
Even before we get to the tyranny of numbers and the message being sent out, Dr. Kamau, how would you analyze the voting patterns yesterday? Because even areas perceived to be Jubilee strongholds have had low turnout, but you also had areas like Ukambani perceived to be NASA strongholds where voting was taking place. They did not boycott the polls. Even the coastal region did not boycott the polls, as in the situation in the larger Nyanza region.
Actually, I appreciate that aspect of trying to look at the bigger picture in the country. I know the media has been a little bit obsessed with, the 4 counties in Nyanza and contrasting that with the turnout in specific counties like Kiambu, comparing with Embu and Murang'a, almost creating a picture like Kenya is divided into these 2 particular regions. But I think looking at the bigger picture, there are counties, of course, where you have said voting did not take place because either the polling stations were blocked or there were demonstrations or roads were closed and therefore people could not access those particular areas. But there were other areas, and you have correctly pointed out a place like Ukambani. You also have places like, that's Lower Eastern. You can also look at Northeastern and other parts in the country where we witnessed voting. Yes, there was boycott because the turnout was significantly low. But you have to remember, these are areas where you are most likely you have both Jubilee and NASA supporters in those particular regions, and where they just allowed the voting process to continue and people decided to express themselves differently. Of course, we know that in some counties, if you look at the counties in what we used to call the central province, we saw the voter turnout was actually at around 70% because they felt they had a stake in this particular election. But I think one thing that can account partly for the low voter turnout across the country, when you look at it from a voter's point of view, there is also this aspect of fatigue. People are basically tired with the endless political drama and constant electioneering process that is not coming to an end. And actually, even this particular election has not resolved that particular issue for us, that whether we are again caught up in suspense and uncertainty. And that thing, of course, creates confusion because for the Mwananchi, up to the day before yesterday when the Supreme Court, when there was no quorum to determine about whether the election would proceed or not, for the majority of Mwananchi, even after having voted yesterday, that question still lingers. What next? What happens after this? Have we now finally concluded all these issues? Was election the only thing standing between us and resolving the issues that have been there as a country? And can we now move on? Because I can tell you, Kenyans would want to move forward. But the political intrigues, which I'm saying we have pushed to IEBC to try and resolve for us, we have pushed to the Supreme Court to again try and resolve for us. But there are still other underlying issues that we'll have to find a way of addressing and dealing with those issues so that we can find closure. But I know, if I can speak on behalf of the ordinary Kenyan voter, we would desire some kind of closure from these constant political intrigues and and drama and electioneering period so that we can actually move forward as a country. And I think that is what we are keen on at this particular point in time. But looking at the apathy that happened, the weather, of course, might have contributed. I've spoken about the environment of fear and intimidation in some parts of the country. And, of course, those who braved the rains and the environment to go out and vote. But ideally, and I think this is quite significant, when we are having a national election, it is desirable that majority of the population feel the need to participate in that election. So when you have an election where a significant population feels we don't have any stake, we don't want to participate, that is a problem in itself. The second thing, of course, is that this being a repeat election from what happened in, after a fresh election from after the August 8 election was nullified, of course. And then when you have a significant candidate pulling out from the process, you expected the turnout would be significantly low. But I have to say that we have to answer certain questions that will arise as a result of the results that are going to be declared out of this election. And then after that, we ask, what next?
Right. And Catherine asked earlier on, what happened to the tyranny of numbers? We've seen campaigns all across the country. The Jubilee Party, in their clarion call, called the supporters to come out and vote in large numbers, saying this time it's nothing but 70+1. There's been a lot of conflicting reports as to the total voter turnout. Yesterday, Ofula Chebukati saying best estimate was 48% by 5 p.m. yesterday. But then again saying that only about 6.5 million Kenyans turned out to vote. And so, it's not very hard to do the math there. 6.5 million Kenyans accounts for somewhere within the 30% frame of the total number of registered voters. But Catherine, why so much hullabaloo about the total turnout? And what message then does that send?
Most Kenyans are genuine. Those who watch football, you cannot go to a field to watch a game where a penalty has been given to a player and the goalkeeper is not in the goal. So most of them were not excited about the whole thing. I think even the rushing to still hold these elections were actually off the show. They should have just waited. I don't know why they're hurrying into everything. Jubilee saying this, NASA is saying this. A real leader will listen to both sides, because at the moment, Uhuru has a really big load. He's carrying all of us. He's the president to all of us in Kenya. And he should, if he's a really loving daddy, he should be listening. Why is the other house not happy? Why is the other house too happy? There are few people who have benefited and have already, taken away some niche of how they will still benefit. And they're in a hurry to benefit very fast. And that is why I said when I started that a government that puts profits ahead of its people, it's evil. And again, looking into it, President Uhuru calls for prayers. I'm assuming he really prays. Now, this time, people still are pushing for these elections to happen very quickly on Saturday. What happened to God first? Me, I'm thinking there is something fishy, and egocentrism is ruling people. They have their self-interests in this instead of putting people first. We are struggling as a nation. No argument there. When we talk of doctors, we are talking of those other corruption that used to happen. Why should somebody now see this time that actually this is the time our economy is going down? Our economy started going down and nobody told us about Eurobond. Nobody explained to us properly NYS scandals, the SGR, whatever, the bridge that even broke in Busia. Nobody explained to us. And a lot of money has been going there. So if it meets this, and now the economy is being felt, it is now being felt to all of us because it wasn't being felt to one part. So at the moment, I think Kenya is almost going into a brink because of a few bad advisors. We need thinkers, both sides, on Baba's side and Uhuru's side. Thinkers who have people as their first priority in this nation. And people who will be giving solutions, not people who are part of a problem. I watched yesterday Honorable Murkomen easily just throwing words. This is not the time of igniting anger or rage again. Anything will trigger anything right now. We need people who will come with solutions. Way forward. We are here as Kenyans. How do we come out of this? And I think if we came around a few noble minds that can help our nation to stop grappling, I think we will move forward in a very amicable way, although we will struggle a little, but we will be going towards solving.
All right.
Michelle, I wanted to interject a bit on the issue of our unhealthy obsession with the numbers. Now, numbers don't lie. Although people use numbers to lie, people can torture and manipulate numbers to tell the story that they want to tell. And I'm sure today, tomorrow, even yesterday, we have seen people trying to tell different stories with the numbers. What is significant and what is not in question is that the turnout was low in a good part of the country. The second issue that is quite significant is that there was a part of the population that decided that they did not have a stake in this particular election, either because they were told to boycott or because they have looked at the process and felt that we don't have any stake in this particular election. And I think the lady from Homa Bay put it across quite well. But having said that, what are we dealing with? Because this is one of those elections. We are not even curious to know, so what are the final figures? We actually knew the winner even before the election was announced because it was almost like no contest. But having said that, in terms of going forward, I have said we are dealing with a problem that goes beyond elections, that goes beyond just the law. And the issue is, for us to find a solution and moving forward, this significant percentage of our population that opted not to participate, and the part of the population that decided to participate, of course, it was in response to calls from their different leaders. That means then, in this political problem and the environment in which we are in terms of finding solutions, it will still come from these political players, because you have heard actually, especially the people from the MCA that you say, they said we will not participate in elections until at such a time where Baba tells us to participate. That means then that he controls people's interpretation of the reality of how they perceive themselves within this particular country. And that tells you, in terms of finding a solution, you cannot ignore the influence and the power that Raila Odinga wields, even especially among his supporters. You can also not ignore that there are people who are willing to come out and defend the win of President Uhuru. And I think it was a positive signal, which you mentioned earlier, that President Uhuru said he is willing to sit down and talk. The only thing that is still not clear to majority of us, and I think the questions remain, is talk about what?
What after the
How
elections?
do we move the country forward? Because we have to accept we are in a deeply divided environment. The scenario is not good. The altercation between the MPs yesterday, which I call a national indiscipline, actually, the irony of it is that it was triggered by a comment where Murkomen tried to show that we leaders, we always talk. We sit together and have tea. And then after that, we saw what happened. I think the country is on edge in that sense, and we have to look for ways of saying, how do we move forward as a country? Of course, we are asking more questions than we are able to provide answers, because we are still looking to these people who have created, and I agree with that, it's selfish personal ambition of leaders who have denied us closure as a country because they could simply find a way of agreeing and saying, how do we move forward? Because I can tell you, my stake, my civic duty, beyond voting, I exercised my civic duty by voting, but I leave it, of course, to IEBC to tally and put it together. But the leaders will still have to find a way. So after us, Wanjiku, we have exercised our right. The leaders will still have to find a way of either accepting our will or finding a way of actually agreeing among themselves, because it is all about power, money, and influence among themselves. And for us, Wanjiku, we continue suffering on this other end.
And we keep speaking of the will of the people. And so the bigger question has been, is this election the end of a problem? You know, we've seen so much hate and so much rivalry on social media, and many after the election have been asking, so are we friends again now after the election has already happened, or are there still deep-seated issues? And you can tell there are still deep-seated issues. But Catherine, how then do we begin? Just picking up from Dr. Kamau, looking for solutions moving forward, because Uhuru Kenyatta says he's willing to meet Raila Odinga after the election, but what are they going to talk about now after this election? And secondly, is it time for a paradigm shift, perhaps for our political parties, to stop being the personal property of politicians, you know, in that we have a certain political figure who is the face of an entire political party, instead of having ideologies run this party?
I think a way forward is to deal with unfinished business. We still have things that IEBC needs to sort. They have not. Clearly, even the way Chebukati was giving us results yesterday, 1 minute it's 48%, the next minute on Twitter is 33%. It just shows how they are not in sync with every other person they are working with in their department. And then I think even in future, people should not work for such an institution if they're partisan. I think we already have a problem with some of the officials in IEBC who are for Jubilee and others are for NASA. And then institutions that will accept to work for Kenya, like now Safaricom, they should not come clearly like Bob Collymore really messed one day by coming out and just saying off his heart, attacking NASA. That was so wrong. We need institutions that have the best, options for Kenya, and will put Kenyans first. And if anybody is complaining, a best leader will go look into it and come out with a solution to make sure that all of us are smiling. Anyway, it's very hard to impress everybody. But if they focus on Vision 2030 of Kenya, then I think any leader focused on that, they will not care if you are their buddies or you are their girlfriends or their clan married from their tribe. They will just focus on developing Kenya.
All right. Let's hold it there for just a moment as we take a short break here on Kivumbi 2017. Dr. Sam Kamau and Catherine Omanyo discussing the aftermath of yesterday's repeat presidential election. We are still waiting for numbers coming in from the constituency level as well as the National Tallying Center. We're expecting an update from Wafula Chebukati on the state of this election and the total voter turnout so far. Chebukati says he will not announce the winner of this election until the election is done in Nyanza Heat region, where it was protests taking place there. 4 counties did not vote in Nyanza region. That election has since been postponed to tomorrow. We are also waiting on a status update on the same here on Kivumbi 2017. Do stay with us. When we come back, we take a look at the situation in Mombasa and Garissa counties.